Good evening, everyone who is watching us on the web. We are so glad you're part of our broadcast this evening. We wanted to start off our presentation, rather, by presenting our dear friend Leo Vieira. But before that, we would like to do a short prayer just to harmonize ourselves and tune our minds in and our hearts and our souls to our spirit guides and higher energy and higher vibration. So join me if you wish in closing your eyes. And together, let's give thanks for this day, for one another. We give thanks to our divine creator for this opportunity to utilize this modern technology in an effort to promote not only solidarity, but promoting positivity, uplifting ideas and ideals. We ask that all those that are currently watching or watching the recorded version, may they be able to receive your loving embrace. May they be able to receive the blessings from the good spirits, soothing their hearts and their minds. We also pray this evening for our speaker Leo. May he be guided for tonight's message and presentation. We thank you and may you bless this meeting this evening. In Jesus' name, amen. So welcome everyone to our live broadcast. Today we will be presenting Leonardo Vieira. He will be continuing his study on the book Planetary Transition, chapters 7 and 8. This is session 4. For those of you who may have not watched it before, that's okay. You can go back and watch the previously recorded versions. It is an excellent book. If you haven't purchased it, it is in English. You can purchase it anywhere on the web, and it's an amazing book. So do not just watch this talk, but purchase your book and follow along with us and be ever so amazed as we are. So, Leo, please. Oh, and also, sorry, my technical staff here is informing me. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave it down in the comment section. Whether if you're watching YouTube or on Facebook or any other medium, please just share your comments, questions, even during the presentation, and we will address them or at the end, or Leo will address them at the very end of his lecture today. So thank you very much. Enjoy.
Thank you, Kirsten, and welcome everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. It's good to be here with you sharing the amazing chapters of the book Planetary Transition by Manuel de Miranda, the Spirit, and Divaldo Franco, the Medium. About 4 months ago, we started working on this amazing book, and we have covered quite a bit of information. And in every chapter, every session that we have shared with one another, it just keeps bringing to us amazing teachings and reminders that we ought to maintain in our lives or to implement in our lives. And tonight or this afternoon is no different because we will be sharing chapters. Well, we have covered chapters 1 through 6, the beginning of the book, the introduction, and chapters 1 through 6. And tonight we will be sharing chapter 7 and chapter 8. Unfortunately, this is not a session that I can go over every single detail. Number one, because it's too much. Number two, because I'm not a specialist on the topic, even though we're studying the book and we're making references with the other teachings that we find in Spiritism. But this is meant for you to, as Kirsten said, to please purchase the book. You can actually get a copy from Liao Publisher. And it's important as well that you go back and really dive into, and not just read the each chapter as you read a magazine, but really dive into as an important book because there are so many teachings. You then can obviously go to the street, the videos that it has been recorded for the other sessions 1, 2, 3, and obviously later on you can always revisit this session of tonight. But again, it's meant for you to read it and really dive into, because it will transform your life. It will help you in this moment of crisis that we're going through as well. As when we started, we never thought that we would be in the position that we are today. And tonight we'll make some connections with what we're going through right now. But this is meant to be carried out throughout our lives. The empowerment that these teachings bring to us is meant to stay with us forever. It didn't start yesterday with what is happening in this book, but it's been there. The grace of God, if I can say this way, has been with us since our creation. So the last 2 chapters, new experiences in the work of illumination, and I'm only going to cover, kind of like make a connection to where we were with these 2 chapters. And then obviously, if you want to go to the previous ones, we can dive into the reading, as well as go back to the sessions that we had before. We were discussing the help that a group of spirits were doing in the spirit realm, as they were in the Indian Ocean, helping after the 2004 tsunami. And it's, we saw that even though they were trying to help, there were many spirit from lower zones, or if we can say lower zones, or not well evolved morally, and in certain ways, didactically speaking, spirits that were trying to gain the energy of those who were recently discarnated. Many of you, if you read these chapters, it's kind of intense, but it does teach us the fact that beyond the physical body, we will see quite the same things that we are seeing now in the physical body, right? People trying to take advantage of others, the energy of others, and I'm not only saying money or physical energy, but our mental and our energies in general. So it's important that we learn how to apply this in our lives. And tonight is going to be this afternoon is going to be the same thing. As we go along, I will try to make some references to what's going on and how we can apply this in our lives. So hang in there. And here it is, the beginning of chapter 7, which is entitled "Love is Divine Power." Manuel Filomeno de Miranda starts by saying, "We had continued our activities for nearly 20 hours straight, and were preparing to return to our spiritual community for a brief rest." So, as we said, we left off, last chapter by saying that, they were, as we said, that they were working, they were trying to help those recently discarnated. We saw certain cases that was very, very enlightening to us. The difficulties that some individuals had to understand. Their new state, which was out of the physical body, because it happened, the tsunami happened, took their lives in a so abrupt a way that they were kind of lost, right? So they were there working for 20 hours. And one parenthesis that I would like to make here, there is a lot of reading with this, so you can follow the thoughts that we will try to present to you. And again, it's hard for me to go ahead and explain what Manuel Filomeno de Miranda actually tries to bring to us. That's why I like to bring some of the readings as well. But bear with me, and certainly at the end we can discuss and go over some of the questions that you have. And then what happens is that suddenly we were, this is Manuel describing, we were approached by a group of aggressive spirits organized like a band of thugs. One of them, who seemed to be a leader, roared, "Who is responsible for the invasion of this area?" So yes, chapter 7, it's a confrontational moment that they had right at the end of the rescue. So we'll take a quick just stop here to think that, wait a minute, in the spirit realm, They were trying to help. This is a group of good and loving, kind spirits who were trying to help who recently discarnated, and they're now going through a confrontational moment with a spirit, a thug. Yes, that's exactly what Mr. Miranda is actually describing to us. And as we can see here in the picture, one is very difficult, and the other one is just trying to explain what's happening. And this is what is happening. This leader of this band, or this group of spirits who were trying to obsess or stop what they were doing, he was very negative about the whole thing. And Dr. White, who was the leader of the group that Mr. Miranda was working with, came along and said, Dr. White approached quietly and explained that he was the one responsible for the work of attending to distressed discarnate, accompanied by friends who assisted him. And he said, this area belonged to me. This is now the other spirit. This area belonged to me long before what you refer to as tragedy. One of the subordinates whom I paid to keep me informed about events that might interest in me said that he had been run off by foreign invaders that had taken possession of our territory. Again, this is the leader of the group who was actually going against Dr. White and the whole group. And then he said, he asked me to come in person with my servants to resolve the matter. So here I am demanding that you stop right now. You weren't invited. This is, again, a leader of a group. I keep saying it because I want to make sure that I bring the actual picture that Mr. Miranda tried to bring to us. That is, he's arguing with Dr. White and saying, look, stop what you're doing. You're not invited here. This is my land, or this is my area, and you're stepping on my toes here. So before we continue, I would like to stop and go back to chapter 4 and understand who is Dr. White. I don't know if some of you may remember. I wish I was at the center right now because I would like to look at everybody and say, do you remember? But here it is, chapter 4, page 44 of the book, to be precise. We will learn that Dr. Charles White, of an English origin, used to practice conventional medicine. And here's the information that we have that is brought to us in the book. When I was incarnated, I lived most of my life in Polynesia. I was one of the conquistadors who, in the name of European civilization, imposed themselves on the islanders of a wide stretch of southern oceans. I'm going to read the whole thing so we get the full picture. We had the mistaken notion that we were superior to those whom we call natives. And in the name of our false values, we strove to acculturate them. Excuse me for 1 second. Them with our presumption of being the lords of knowledge. Go back here, excuse me. And then an honest mistake. The longer we live with them, the more we discover the wisdom in their apparent primitivism. We found in their seemingly crude worship profound information handed down orally from one generation to the next, along with their traditional activities. Their shamans, in their momentous spirit communications, were at the same time priests, doctors, thinkers, scholars, counselors, administrators, and effective psychologists. From them, we learn about the interference of the dead in the lives of the living. And we also learn that the most effective therapy for facing the challenges of the health disease binomial is always reciprocal love and care by all members of the clan. As time passed, I chose to live with their nativity, assimilating their customs and skills. My life was proving to the long and fruitful, allowing me to love unconditionally and to receive the tribute of the respect and affection of their pure sentiments. My discarnation did not take me away from them at all. And now, as desolation and tragedy assailed to those I owe so much, I applied to participate Look what he's saying. I applied to participate in one of the aid caravans to show my gratitude. So this is a spirit who worked, who lived in the area long, long ago. And we're going to see the connection later on because he was one of the conquistadors with Europe way back when, at Europe civilization, when they were imposing themselves. In what I would like to share with you, something we learned studying religion, is the expressive religion, right? Express traditions and expressive religions or culture. The reason it's called expressive religions or tradition is because, as we said here, they don't have many of these tribes or these group of people. They don't have their writing well defined, and they transfer their teachings from orderly, as Mr. Miranda actually explains to us. And it's important for us to see here how well connected they are, even though they are vibrating more in an instinctive way with the creation, right? Showing to us through their shamans, through their acts, respecting nature in one another, how important it is for us to also appreciate some of these groups of people and the teachings that they have for us. Just as Dr. White was so intrigued by it, and he asked to continue living with them at the time that he was there. And in new reincarnations, now especially, not in the reincarnation, but especially now in the spirit realm, asked to help them. So here it is, a gentleman or a spirit who is well prepared. He knows what's going on, how they live, how they, their culture, because it's hand down, even though we're talking now the future, but he has a lot of understanding of these people. So it's not just someone that, okay, I'm going to go help next door. No, this person, this spirit knows quite a bit of this group of people. And he had lived with them way back in the European civilization when they went to, first connected with these groups of people. So the reason I bring this here is because the spirit said, the Dr. White comes to them and said, their appeal came to our community. This is Dr. White saying, as it had to many others, by means of the sound of a horn playing the song Silence, expressing the suffering that had befallen thousands of lives of the terrestrial planet. We presented ourselves to our governor, and were authorized to participate in an agape of solidarity with our suffering brothers and sisters here. So this is again Dr. White explaining to this chief of this group of rebellers, right? Saying, look, we're here and we're doing a work. We're doing something of a work of help. We're not here to take anybody's energy. Then it continues. Well, the other brashly interrupted him again. This is the whole confrontational part of it. That does not justify you or other foreigners sticking your noses in our business in disregard for our habits and customs. This is again the leader now of the group saying to Dr. White, ever since the time of the Dutch colonization by the East Indian Company in the 16th century, we nationals have rebelled against invaders of our lands. East Timor, dominated by the Portuguese centuries ago, is still a thorn in our side. Death didn't put an end to our liberating ideals. And although we have been returning to our beloved soil through physical rebirth, we are turning to our origins in order to defend our right to construct our nationality with our own sentiments. Here it is, folks. This spirit is actually bringing something, or he's rebelling against something that happened in the 16th century. And we're going to dive a little bit more. I just want to highlight this part of this paragraph here with you. Something happened centuries ago, and here it is. He's like, no, you're not getting here. You're not staying here. You're not going to dominate us anymore. You need to get out, right? And he says, we will continue to liberate our people victimized by foreign interference, whatever it costs. Not too long ago, governments worse and weaker than ours handed us over to the West. Japan played a major role in it, generating more happiness and illicitly in reaching its leaders, such as the one who used to be in power, as well as his predecessor, who viciously beat him without any consideration for our national ideals. As you can see there, the face of like, wait a minute, we're talking about something that happened in the 16th century. Now we're talking about something that is happening, that happened then recently to that event. This spirit is rebelling against the misappropriation of their culture, of their energies that they had, their anything that they had that was taken from them in a very harsh way. We're talking about, again, if I go back here real quick, we're talking about this European civilization coming and dominating their whole culture, right? And here it is, the spirit rebelling against. So when we look at this, we were like, wait a minute, does this really happen? And how did it happen? Just a little excerpt that I would like to bring, two excerpts that I would like to bring from to you. Because as we dove into this idea of the East Indian Company, the Dutch colonization, this is a very small thing for us to put a picture on what is happening here. According to Teller, which is actually a excerpt of the Business Insider article that I came across, while the East India Company was established by the English in the 1600s, the Dutch East Indian Company, or the Verenigde Oost-Indische Company, that I'm trying to say here in Dutch, but please, sorry, forgive me for not being able to say it correctly, or VOC, VOC, was founded by the Dutch in 1602, and it traded, explored, and colonized Indonesian countries from the 16th century to the 18th centuries. So 200 years, this company, the VOC, actually traded in the area, bringing commodities from the area all the way to Europe. And you can see the map here. How was the distribution? Which is amazing to say that it happened. I think that it gives us a good an understanding on how we are dependable, right, on the commodities, on the things that we eat nowadays. But what happened was, you can get the picture from this other article here that I found. As stated in Breening, the company had almost, this company, the VOC, had almost 5,000 ships under its command, and during its 200 years monopoly in Asia, it sent close to 1 million people to the area. Some of its ships provided 400 profit returned. We're not trying to get in business here, but for you or for anybody to get a 400 profit, and the profit, if I would like to remind you here, is anything that you keep in your pocket after you sell an item. You take how much you pay for the item, you go ahead and make that payment, and it is whatever's left over when you're doing business, right? So it's profit, it's free money that you're getting from that purchase or from that sale or that deal that you're making with the other side. In order for you to make a 400 profits, there's got to be something wrong. Either you bought the product very low, or you're manipulating something. And the manipulation was the people. They were extracting, they were abusing the area. And this is the reason why we see a group of spirits now saying, not here, not anymore. And you see a picture of the ships then. And this is in the 1600s, where technology was not even there. This company, not trying to go into detail, they revolutionized what we understand as business nowadays. If you hear the word LLC or limited liability company, they were the ones who created this whole idea. Bring investors to the company, and the returns was just amazing, as you can see here. So not by chance that the spirit was going crazy on the help that Dr. White and his group, including in this case Mr. Miranda, helping there the recently discarnated spirits, and saying, look, not here. But the confrontation doesn't stop there. Look what happens. Dr. White says, I understand your patriotic stance, Dr. White replied. However, the boundaries you mention apply to Earth geography and not this realm, because everything here is divine property. It's God's. Listening to you, one might get the impression that you are a benefactor of the suffering people, when in fact you are an unrepented exploiter of the energies of deserters who fall into your evil traps and who are then dragged to places of profound suffering far from any hope and mercy. Is that justice? Discipline? How dare you take the dagger of true justice into your own hands when you have not yet mastered the wild impulses of your sick nature? This is Dr. White very kindly, but I know it's hard to say, to be kind and or to be aggressive. When I say aggressive, is very firm with the spirit, because they were actually fighting, and Miss Miranda actually explains that they had their gears, they had their spears, they had their. It was an army of spirits who were trying to attack them. Dr. White, as well as the other spirits that were trying to help. As if waiting for the reaction, this is what happened. After, well, take a step back, the leader of the group commanded that they were to attack Dr. White and everybody who was helping. And look what happens. As if waiting for this reaction, the doctor concentrated deeply before the aggressors in that dreadful barren land, transforming himself into a blazing light that stopped the horde who had raised their instruments of war, arrows, javelins, spears, and other exotic looking weapons, dead in their tracks, excuse me. And then he actually, in this form of light, said, taken by surprise, they heard this deep voice, melodic, energetic, and powerful voice in their own dialect. So the group was listening to what Dr. White was saying in their own dialect. He said, repent and bow down to the will of the Lord of the worlds. And this is just part of it, folks. He said much more, and I urge you to really read this. There comes a time in our madness that offers only one choice: forsake your hatred and wretched persecution and embrace love. The years have slipped away and you have remained hostile to the good and the truth. Your weakness overflows, and instead of inspiring fear or hate, your insanity prompts compassion. Now is your moment of joy and emancipation. Free yourselves from evil. He actually continues by saying other things, but it's interesting that he's actually talking to these spirits, and the spirit starts, mellowing down. Some of them in convulsion, and stops the whole fighting process that the engagement of fighting that they were in before. And it's described that all of these spirits who were trying to fight or to attack the group, they actually were taking to be helped, obviously, and the Dr. White actually sends them to be helped, and he finalizes this way: Jesus always wins. We have plenty of work ahead. Taking our frightened brothers to the proper community for shelter is our duty. I will enlist the assistance of other groups in the area specializing in this type of assistance. Love is a divine power that always triumphs. If anything, please remember this blue part over here, because this is actually an amazing closing to this chapter, and how Dr. White is so precise on the way he talks to this group of people, this group of natives that are so upset with the abuses of the past, long ago past, not something that happened yesterday. Before we go into the next chapter, I would like to make a pause over here and kind of analyze a little bit this idea, why we're bringing this, and or why is Dr. or Mr. Miranda bringing this. Let us think about our decisions. This is something that happened 1600 years ago. Do we think that our decisions of yesterday is not impacting us today? Do we think that our decisions 1600 or centuries ago is not impacting us today? It is. We are rescuing all of these things that is happening to us. It doesn't say in the book. It doesn't give him any indication yet. We'll discuss that later if it happens. But it doesn't give an indication that perhaps Dr. White was one of the conquistadors, one of the individuals related to the companies that were exerting or taking from the area in the region in the 1600s. However, everything indicates to us that many of us, when we go through certain situations that we have to rescue, that we have to make amends, it's because we have a connection in the past. It's not that we are being invited to live in the past or to be fearful of the past, but for us from now on to make better decisions, to think, look, if I make this decision now, this is going to impact my life in the next 5 minutes, in the next hour, tomorrow, or perhaps centuries to come. Because we don't know how this is going to affect the other person or the other group of spirits, and they're going to come back to us. They're going to knock on our door saying, look, this is what happened in the 1600s. We need to make better decisions. And you may ask, Leo, how do we know that we're making better decisions? Very easy. One way, and each of us will gain our own ideas of what is to be wise or to make a wise decision, but apply to yourself. And there is something very interesting that I always like to remember, that we learn from the philosopher Kant, that is to apply our type of a universal truth, that you apply your decision or your action to all times and to everybody. If everybody were to do the same action, would that be reasonable? Would people be happy? Everybody be happy? Or would you be happy if you were to do the same thing, or to receive the same thing from others? So this is just begging us to rethink our actions and to also understand that nothing is by chance, right? We have these decisions, and perhaps one day we will be recalled, or why not to think that we are being recalled right now to make amends or to fix things that we have done in the past. Why not? Just a thought for us, as we promised, that we would apply this to our lives. We don't have to worry about what the government is doing, the different governments, because we also saw the Spirit mention that recently something had happened recent to that event, the tsunami event, that the Japanese also was still doing things that were not appropriate here. And again, I know that we may get political and whatnot, but it's actually what is in the book. But we want to make sure that, yes, we hear, we understand, we watch the news, we see that some things are not conforming to God's law. But the main thing here is for us to ask ourselves, am I doing the same thing in a smaller scale? Am I making decisions that is hurting my brother or sister, my neighbor? And who is our neighbor? Everybody who's connected with us. So that is chapter 7, right? And we want you to read. We want you to really make this connection and apply this in your lives. And we're going to go back to a little bit more to this saying here, because it may seem to you or to many out there that are not of a Jesus follower, if we can say it that way, that Jesus is imposing this idea of win. But remember, he's talking about love, that the divine power always triumphs, right? Is the love, the unconditional love that Jesus portrayed to us, exemplified to us, that is exemplified as well under the other religions, under the other beliefs that we have in the world, that is under the guidance of Jesus. As we learn in Spiritism, the governor of the planet, Jesus Christ, is always guiding all these different religions, all these different work that is being done, so much so that we see this being portrayed here under the guidance of Dr. White when he chose a Muslim, faith, someone of a Muslim faith, someone who is Jewish, right? Mr. Miranda, I keep referring to Dr. Miranda, Mr. Miranda, who is in that case Spiritist, and we have his assistants, who was a Protestant as well, right? So we see how he brings the teachings to of being diverse, acceptance of who we are in the spirit realm as well. It's not just here on earth, but of who we are in the spirit realm, doing an amazing work. So we move on to chapter 8, unexpected assistance. When we say unexpected, is obviously unexpected for you, myself, Mr. Miranda as well, as we're going to see here. And it's always important for us to understand that nothing is by chance, and we're going to see a little bit of this here. Ms. Miranda says the unexpected incident amazed us, but not our mentor, Dr. White in this case, due to his wonderful premonitory ability. Invested with a task of such a magnitude, he was revealing himself to our group only little by little. It's interesting because we see individuals in our day-to-day lives that that this person is an amazing individual, does amazing works, but they talk very little about themselves. They only say the necessary in the right time. Look what happens. The information about the request by the guides of Indonesia for spiritual assistance to communities in the beyond also resounded within us in an enjoyable and illuminating way. Since there really is no such a thing as chance, all spiritually constructive labors are prearranged, studied carefully, and the possibility of success or failure examined. And when they are begun, the plan moves forward surely and with well-defined goals. And for some of you, my cup of tea is business, right? Whenever in any business, in any situation, at the SSB as well, at the Spiritist Center, not SSB, whenever we try to work with something, we start a work, we prepare, we do everything, we think of, okay, how many people is going to be involved, what are the possibilities that we're going to connect with the group this way or that way, what is the crowd, we think about these things. For business, it's the same thing. For any type of business, when you're trying to sell a product, when you're trying to guide a group of people, you have to think about these things. You have to make sure that you study carefully all the possibilities of what is the outcome and what are we trying to reach. This is anything in our lives. More so, obviously, as we're saying, business. And guess what? It's the same thing for these enlightened minds when they're doing higher work. When I say higher work, the magnitude of work that they're doing here, especially for Dr. White, he actually was working not only in the moment, but he was already thinking about, as we have seen, what's going to happen with these individuals that when we go there and we try to rescue them. Let's not go too much into depth into it. Let's actually see what Mr. Miranda says. Actually, I remember when the trumpets sounded in our colony on that morning of December 26th. We all gathered in prayer because our communications department immediately informed us about the great tragedy so that we could follow the tragic events. However, I had been unaware of the measures established by the mentors and their respect for assistance in the spirit world. A couple of things I'd like to remind you. The spirit knew that the earth was going to go through these geological changes, right? The tectonic plates were going to be moving, and this is going to cause, so much damage in the area, as well as what would happen. We're talking about higher mentors who understand these things, who have dealt with this before, and they were able to apply and foresee what's in front of it and how much damage is going to perhaps happen, not in terms of the physical, but also the spiritual, because they understand, they know that the physical is important, right? No wonder we're incarnated. But the biggest damage here is the lives that were lost in all of this, in the physical, the transition, we can say this way. It even begs us to change the way we say it, the transformation from the change from the physical incarnated body into back into the spiritual reality, right? That we're all going to go one day. But for many of us, this is suffering, and they are there to help, and they're already preparing what was going to help. And so was Dr. White. Dr. White had been making arrangements with organizations that specialized in helping those who had repented, marked by serious mental and emotional illness. Their bodies denoted the pain experienced due to continuous years of dreadful suffering and dependence on tormentors who abused them, reducing them to slaves of their passions. And I remember when Mr. Miranda actually noted that when he looked at them with compassion, he was able to see that these spirits were actually posing their condition was basically a exteriorization of their what they nurtured mentally, right? What they were thinking, the way they were vibrating, right? And we're gonna see a little bit more about vibration, but the way they were vibrating is exactly how they were. And Dr. White was there to help, thinking, look, we're going to get all these people back, hopefully, with our hard work with the our Master Jesus and God. We're going to get these people to come and really soothe down, or to calm down their nerves, and think about something else. Think about another option, if we can say that way. Well, guess what? We need help. And there he was with, as we see here, organizations that would come and help them. Now that their mental attitude had started to change, they began to realize the deplorable state they were in, experienced the implacable pain of the infirmities that had ended their physical existence, as well as the deep marks of the disorders caused by the insanity they had allowed to develop. Moreover, due to their unfortunate behavior, each one's perispirits displayed his or her previous spiteful sentiments, now exteriorized as putrid sores, deformities, and amputations, and enveloped in dark, low level vibrations. I know this is kind of hard for us to read and kind of like to picture, but the reason we bring this in is to really show it to us that it's not imposed by someone else. It was not imposed by another spirit or group of spirit. This is actually what each of these spirits who were suffering allowed themselves to go into. We're not talking about a being upset over something small. It starts that way, but it keeps going and going and going, and it gets bigger as we connect with other minds that are thinking just like we are when we are upset. These spirits, they kept connecting and making whatever suffering they were going through, which we respect and we understand what they went through. As we have posed here, there are a lot of other groups of people exploring their energies, but they allowed themselves and became dependent on these other leaders in the dark side or in the spirit realm to continue taking their energies, right? So it's important for us to highlight this so that we don't think that, oh, the obsessor or this or that person is responsible for my suffering. In to a certain extent, yes, there is a responsibility when we enslave someone else or when we bring madness to someone else's life. However, we are free to make a change. We are sons and daughters of God, that we can also allow ourselves to be free and to be happy as well. Moving on, changing a little bit of the subject of suffering, I would like to bring something to you. And this is actually a question that Mr. Miranda had with in this chapter, that begs us to analyze, and how it gives us, it's an antidote on how we can also live a better life, as we were just saying. Having in mind the fact that the brothers who assaulted us spoke the national language and could not understand another. How were you able to communicate with them? This is Mr. Miranda asking Dr. White. How did you communicate with them when he transformed himself into that very loving and explicit, white light, right? And start to speak with them and demanding them in a way, in a courageous way, to change their ways. How did they understand? Very interesting question, because when we read for the first time, it's like we didn't pay attention. And we brought in previous slides that he was connecting with them, he was speaking with them in their native language. Mind you, that it was not only the group of spirits there, the that was actually assaulting them. There was Mr. Miranda, there was his friend, there was the other helpers in the area as well, and they listened to the whole thing. So not only the group, but Mr. Miranda, he actually brought to us what he said, so he understood as well. And if we go back and we analyze who is Mr. Miranda, he was actually, the last time, we don't want to say that he just speaks Portuguese, but in the last reincarnation was Portuguese. He lived in Brazil, as we saw, I believe, in session 1. Yes, we saw in session 1 who he was. So he understood. So he was able to connect with the message as well. And then Dr. White says, I utilize mental waves without verbalization in words. Under the circumstances and the thought that developed the waves, those afflicted brothers heard in their own language because we were vibrating on the same track of thought. On the other hand, the members of our group heard the dialogue in the language with which we communicated with one another. Since our group is composed of spirits from different countries, our communication is mental, without the need for oral expression formulated in the patterns of each language. We'll go a little bit over here and read this next two paragraphs so we have a full picture of what happened. The language of the universe is thought, which modulate expressions according to the reception of each listener. The task of interpreting language belongs to the perispirit, which has scored the idiomatic matrices of the countries we have lived in during our many corporeal lives. Even when we meet those from regions where we have never reincarnated, their minds captures and decodes the thought waves. Everything happens automatically and naturally without effort. Even so, when there is an attunement of ideas, interests, or desires, the phenomenon becomes more efficient and quicker. During my discussion with the leader of the rebel flock, I used formulations of the English language. Dr. White, he was from England, if you remember. That's why I brought that recapitulation of chapter 4, which were heard in Indonesian, Portuguese, and Tagalog, and also by our collaborators depending on their country of origin. This is very interesting. It really blows our mind on how this communication happens. Not because we're talking about languages, but how we emit our vibrations and how we capture others' vibrations as well. Here, it begs us to think, what am I emitting? What am I receiving as well, right? And he goes further. We're going to go back to this because this is very important in our lives. But he goes further to say the following. Imagine a symphonic orchestration that reaches our ears, accompanied by a choir singing in a particular language. And we will see that we register the music and the voices, grasping their content, but without understanding the words. What is important is the melody and the emotion it awakens in us, the joy that permeates us, and the immense well-being arising from its musical effect. Very easy for us to describe here. If you listen to a choir singing in Latin, many of us, we don't speak Latin, but when we listen to, we receive that inundation of feelings, right? This is beautiful. Did you understand anything in terms of what exactly was being said? No, but we are able to grasp the grandeur of the kind voices, what is inviting us to think and to live a better life, and whatever the content may be, we grasp some of it, at least to lower our vibration to a point that is not what is happening to us, right? But it's important that we look at this. And I went further a little bit to think of what happened in the Sermon on the Mount when Jesus spoke for a crowd of people, and we learn that the amazing number of people that were there at the bottom of the mount were able to hear the same way that others were hearing right next to Jesus as well. I brought the excerpt from the Bible here, Luke 6, 17, 19, where we have the explanation of what happened there. You can also find this in Matthew 5, chapter 5, but you will not get the same explanation in Matthew 5. When Luke, we see that not only people were hearing, but also they were being cured. People were being touched in a different way by Jesus. And it says, he went down with them and the group of apostles and stood on a level place. A large crowd of his disciples was there, and a great number of people from all over Judea, from Jerusalem, and from the coastal region around Tyre and Sidon. This is right near Israel today, who had come to hear him and to be healed of their diseases. Those troubled by impure spirits were cured, and the people all tried to touch him, because power was coming from him and healing them all. We take a look, we stop here and we analyze this whole thing with some enlightenment of Spiritism. And I want to go deeper on this, because this right here is what defines our lives in many ways. What we are vibrating, because we're responsible with what we are vibrating, on how we are vibrating and the content of our vibrations, as well as what we're receiving, right? So if we go to the Spirit's book, we understand that there are three elements in the universe: God, our creator, right? The spirit and matter. And the universal cosmic fluid is right in between the spirit and matter, or cosmic fluid, if you want to call it, right? The universal cosmic fluid, under the direction of the spirit, can be modified and it can be transformed in different things that we lack understanding. So it's hard for us to, in this session, go deeper into it. And I know there's a lot of content out there, videos. You can go to our library of videos, and you will see a lot of teachings in this part. But we are manipulators of this universal cosmic fluid. A very short example is how you're listening to me right now. I'm speaking through this microphone. The information is being decoded, right? In a way, in an electronic way, that you will receive and you understand and you hear what I'm saying. We're already doing this, right? But for higher spirits, they are doing it in a much more elevated way. And we see that matter is a variation of the universal cosmic fluid, and what we consider simple elements are variations of the primitive matter. Then there is one question that I would like to share with you to further emphasize on this. Question 32 of the Spirit's book: then wouldn't flavors, odors, colors, sounds, even the poisonous or healing qualities of certain bodies be no more than modification of the one and the same primitive substance? And the Spirit says, yes, of course, and they only exist due to disposition of organs that are meant to perceive them. Guess what? Those spirits that with Dr. White, if they didn't hear it, it was because they were not able to perceive them yet. The spirits that were with Jesus at the Sermon of the Mount, if they were not healed, it was because they didn't have the disposition yet to listen to. If you don't have a computer in your home right now and you're trying to follow this talk, guess what? You're not going to be able to, because you don't have the device to do so. And it's the same with our bodies. So how do we live a better life? How do we attune with higher minds? We have to develop this capability. We have to emphasize in our lives better thoughts, better feelings, read more enlightening things so we can create a better discernment on what's right and what's wrong, right? Make better decisions, right? Live more harmoniously. When we think of something negative, when we see something negative, we try to exchange with something positive. Try to learn from the situation, not in a way that you're just there to learn and not care, right? But care about it, but say, look, at least this I'm not gonna do again, or I'm not gonna fall in the same pit, right? And you learn and you move on, and you perhaps try to bring some enlightenment if you can, if you are invited, because sometimes we try to help and we make it worse, right? So I think this question that Mr. Miranda had about how he was able to communicate and they go into this detailed explanation is very important for all of us, because it's important for us to apply the same ideals in our lives. Because sometimes we think, we hear a lot of this in the Spiritist Center. Why I never seen, I never heard, I never, who is my mentor, right? It's always this question. Well, are we uplifting ourselves in such a way that we can actually connect with our mentors? Yes or no? Right? And what kind of connection do you want to establish with your mentor too? Is it just that you're asking for things all the time? Not that we're not supposed to, it's okay. That's why they are there. But really to identify our purpose in this current reincarnation and perhaps in the following ones, right? So here it is, a very important lesson for us that we should apply in our lives. And here the mechanism that we can learn more in the Spirit's book, that it's not just something that is going to happen overnight, but it takes effort, it takes study as well. And this is very small, folks. Please go and read. We could go on and on and on, saying the same thing, and we say it because if it is good for us, we would like you to also apply in your lives, right? To kind of finalize, I want to just share, bring the excerpts that illustrates the helps that the Dr. White was employing to help the ones that were rescued. And Ms. Miranda said, the timing did not allow for our dialogue to continue. At that moment, a vehicle stopped some distance away, and some workers of the good got out and introduced themselves to Dr. White. It was the assistance requested by those responsible for receiving and caring for the repentant brothers that opt for renewal and understanding. Look, they opted for it. They were not imposed. They were invited in a very strong and demanding way that, look, we want you to be better. You are a son and daughter of God. Please repent. We're here to help you, and we'll give you the guidance and what you need to live a more fulfilling life. Several of these workers of charity entered our field of relief and begun to assist the sufferers, leading them one by one to the vehicle hovering in the air about a meter above the ground. Some moved with difficulty despite the assistance, but a total of 80 were soon in their seats. Just numbers and what was happening physically in the spirit realm, but it gives us a glimpse of the rescue that happens here on Earth, right? I put the helicopter here because we saw the hovering, but it happens here on Earth. So what we're doing here, it's just a copy of it, right? So the other part is that they were about to be transferred to a relief colony, then to the selfless, assistance of numerous Polynesian helpers, some having come from far off, more primitive islands, generous and naive naive. They devoted themselves with childlike joy in assisting our victimized brothers and sisters, singing some sentimental songs from the land that they inhabited before discarnating. Dressed with simplicity and wearing colorful hats, their clothes gave them a unique and harmonious beauty. And everything has a purpose for what the Mr. Miranda is saying and the work that they were doing here. And we see how generous and how humble these helpers were. They didn't want to create a strike them with, like, anything beyond what they could comprehend. They dress very naturally, nothing really fancy. We don't have to show our titles to help, or we don't have to be any bigger than we are to extend a hand. And I think this is the lesson that we get from these paragraphs here, beyond the previous well thought out assistance that Dr. White employed, right? The preparation, say, okay, there will be a lot of people in need of help. I cannot do this by myself. I need help. Working in conjunction with other people, right? This is very important for us to highlight as well, that he was working with a very large group of people, right? So to finalize, the when they got back to the post where they were, uh, uh, Mr. Miranda was actually invited by Dr. White to go and get some rest, about 4 hours of rest, and he was actually very adamant to see 4 hours. And when he was at this location, he actually was introduced to this beautiful white. Um, I'm sorry, not white. I'm looking at the white and I said white, but actually the this very nice building, glass building, right? Open glass building, where an individual was talking, giving this talk, talking about cooperation and being harmonious and bringing harmony to them. Right before he entered this building, Mr. Miranda said the following. It's very difficult to be immersed in the world of effects, trying to understand the causes, as happens with content of any kind when we try to imagine what the land awaiting us will actually be like. The only finding, this is him pondering as when he was on the physical body, now saying it's very hard for us to think, or what's going to happen when we go back to our spiritual nature. And what he said to us, that he could perceive, was the only finding is that life, motion, and activity are everywhere, and that the earth is but a poor copy of that wonderful, pulsating, permanent world where we originated. So this is a copy of what's happening on the other side. Our communication skills right now, everything is just a continuation, a very poor continuation, as he's saying here, that is an invitation for us to develop ourselves, to perhaps see in a much more ample and a broad way what's happened on the other side, our true nature. That's why we brought this thought here, because we also have come across spiritist friends thinking, how is really on the other side? For some of us who are not mediums, who had never been able to be taking in a spiritual journey, and remember it, because sometimes I believe we do get these spiritual journeys, or spiritual trips, but when we come back to the physical body, because of the matter, we're not able to remember precisely. We then ask these questions, right? What is it the other side? And we really get ourselves tangled with the day-to-day physical, materialistic ways of life, and we forget that our true nature is the spiritual nature. But it's just a reality. This is a temporary reality that we are living, that perhaps when we go to the other side, we'll be able to see the reasons why we're going through what we're going through now. um, I would say independently as well as collectively. And we will see the reasons why we are connected with this or that person, this group of people, our family members, our jobs, and the general in terms of why we're here. We talked about many things, folks. We talked about different aspects of life, in the spiritual, in the physical, in many things. We saw the work that Dr. White prepared, and the cooperation of his group, right, from previous chapters as well. The services that they were providing to others who were in going through a difficult moment. We were talking about a confrontation. Who would think that we would talk about a confrontation, a hard confrontation, on a book that is talking about planet transition? There it is. We had it. We saw religion, we saw culture, we saw beliefs. We talked about business. What happened in 1600s when they were exploiting the riches of of Indonesia, right? We talked about cause and effect. It happened then, and now we have to go ahead and rescue what we have done. In the confrontational, in the whole scheme of things, we saw choice, because we have a choice to deal with the difficulties and maintain that one thought in our lives, right? That self obsession, as well as it's part of anybody's free will to vibrate the same way over and over and over. But we also have a free will. We have a choice to change. We are invited to change with the new reincarnations while we reincarnate. We talked about being able to express ourselves with respect, with others, vibrating the same way. But most importantly, if anything, I would like to go back and say it again, that Jesus always wins. Love is a divine power that always triumphs. And here I would like to make a connection with this word respect. If we have respect for ourselves and for the people, just as Dr. White mentioned when he was expressing or saying his reincarnation, about talking about his reincarnation, one of his incarnation as a conquistador, that he saw that he developed this respect for these people, right? He became very connected with them, learned how to love them, and most importantly, the others, these group of people as well, that he thought he would manipulate, learn how to love him as well because of his respect. Now, in this voyage or in this endeavor, there he was working and expressing the love that Jesus taught us. And this is what I would like to leave you with in this amazing two chapters. I know we talked a lot, and I would like to open up for some comments and questions that you may have about this. If I cannot answer, I will write them down and hopefully we can discuss in the future. And as we said at the beginning, stop, read the chapters, read the book, go back to the sessions. If I have say something wrong, pull my ears, pull my chains. I would like to hear from you, and certainly learn from you as well on your takes of these amazing chapters.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing this, Leo. It's absolutely fascinating. I just kind of like sitting here like, wow. Just wanted to share some of the comments and questions from our chat, both from Facebook as well as from YouTube. And for those of you who are watching, I think we also have a comment from Yasko, which I'll read here in a second, that she put in via text. So I'll read that in a second as well. So we have just a couple of comments. Marcelo Celestino said that's a great book. Murillo actually had a question. It was he asked first, but it was very similar to what I was wondering as well, and posted in the chat. So when you were talking about the language of the universe is thought, when you were quoting the book, so the question that Murillo poses is this language of thought, and to do what that mentor did. In order to do that, do we need to know how to do it? Does it depend on our degree of evolution? My question was kind of the same, like language of the universe is thought. Will that depend on each spirit's level? So it's kind of the same question.
Gotcha. I would like to say that we are already doing it, and we have been doing it for quite some time. You can, the way I would like to express is this: if you go into an environment that everybody is sad, everybody is upset, you look at their face expressions, you look at perhaps you at times you don't even look at anybody's face expression, the physical expressions you can sense in the air, right? The same is true on the positive way. If you go into an environment or get into an environment where people are smiling not only physically but also inside. And you will capture these smiles or these positive behaviors when they speak as well. You will get it, you will feel it, right? I have heard from many people when they go to someone else's house and they eat something. It could be the simplest food ever, right? But that, and I'll bring a Brazilian joke right now. It could be the rice and beans. Nothing wrong with rice and beans. I love rice and beans, but it's the simplest food ever. But it tastes so great. It tastes so good, and sometimes we wonder why, right? Well, the person who prepared really put their intention into it, right? And this goes for any work that we're doing in our lives. So this idea that we have to learn, we're already doing it. We have been doing this in the expressive reincarnation, or our reincarnations in the expressive families or groups of people, right? When we didn't have writings, how did we communicate? It's the same way, in a rudimentary way, right? But it was happening. The same thing, it's important for us to say that we don't want to stop here. We want to develop, right? That one day we'll be able to connect very easily with others in a more effective and without the poor languages that we have. And I'm saying this with a lot of respect for the English language, the Portuguese language, and I'll say the Spanish as well, because I speak a little bit of Spanish, but I still have a lot to learn. But to look at someone, and by the looks, we know what the person wants. We know how the person is vibrating. This, the last example that I would like to give is like the husbands and wives, they have that great affinity. They don't have to say anything. or the son and daughter, when they look at their mother and the mother is giving that side look, it's like, no, don't do it. You're gonna get in trouble. But again, I know this is perhaps not what we are expecting in terms of an answer. But I think that we already, well, I should say, I am sure that we're already doing this, but we have to refine it. And I think with time, for sure, we'll be able to get there. So thanks for the question.
Thank you, Leo. So I just want to share a couple of comments as well. Fatin is in the YouTube chat, and she just commented, wow, the fact that they communicated through thoughts, vibrations made me realize how powerful our thoughts are. It reminded me of the hate, love, I think water experiment, I think she meant to say, from Dr. Emoto.
Right.
So yeah, thank you, Fatim, for that. That was really good comment. She also comments, knowing that languages doesn't matter is a relief. I was scared to discarnate in a foreign country, being French in USA, and not being able to communicate properly. Might sound silly, but it's reassuring.
That is an awesome comment. And please do not be afraid. Nothing's going to happen to you that when you get to the other side, you will not find other spirits that will help you. I'll give you an example of what we have learned at the Spiritist Society of Baltimore, and we see this in the literature too, that quite often in the mediumistic meeting, we will find a spirit who speaks of a different language of our native language here in the US, but they are brought to colonies that have someone who speaks that language, right? And you may say, okay, Leo, so you're going against of what we learn in the book right now. Well, we have to understand that the level of the spirit when we discarnate, perhaps we may not be. That's why we said that it's important on how we vibrate and the things that we assimilate. Sometimes I cannot assimilate certain things. I had a friend today who actually asked me a question in German because he speaks German well. And like, look, I don't know German. I couldn't understand. And yes, it could happen to our minds and our hearts when we discarnate. But rest assured that there will be a good help that will come to rescue those who are in need of some communication, right? And in the case that I was portraying here at the SSB in the mediumistic meeting, we were brought the explanation that in certain locations, even though it's not the native language, there are others who help as well. Obviously, it all depends on our merit. It all depends on how we're vibrating. But this happens, as we said, not only on the side that we have developed or not, but also the rescue just as it happened with Dr. White and those who couldn't understand him. So the mental vibration will be there too.
Absolutely. Great explanation, Leo. So some other comments and questions. So Raquel in the Facebook commented, I love the topics of this book. Thanks for sharing it. And I know that Paula also made a comment question, but I wanted to share Yasko's first that she made in a text message. And she said, great talk, amazing information, Leo. It is unimaginable how destructive this Western conquerors were, not only wiping out their native beliefs, medicine, sacred worshiping of nature, and worse, leaving such hatred. Unfortunately, the exploitation of nature and indigenous cultures was still happening in the time of the tsunami, as the natives, the elephants, and many other animals were used by the tourism industry.
Mhm.
I wonder, after the tsunami and the massive destruction of Western material values, there have been some rescue of the values of the natives and less Westernization. In other words, what are the lessons to learn about the destruction of cultures?
Wow, very deep.
Mhm.
It crossed my mind, Kirsten. I believe you were the one who brought this information about the gentleman who had his Harley Davidson that was wiped out. I mean, the container who actually was holding his Harley Davidson uh, was also hit. In after years, they found it and they reconstruct the bike and everything. And he said, "Look, I don't need this. I don't need this anymore. There are people suffering, right? There are people who lost much more than just a piece of metal. That obviously for him there is a some value." And for many of us, but there's more than that. There's more than just the physical, right? Just like as we're learning right now. Yeah, we need money, we need our homes and everything, but most importantly, we need one another, right? When we're talking about this pandemic that we're going through right now. So the everything will transform, and I'm not, please don't take me wrong, I'm not putting aside culture, I'm not putting aside language, I'm not only talking about putting aside our values or energies, right? The commodities that it was war taking and is still taking from these other countries for us to live a very luxury life. But it's important for us to think that these things will come to pass. What will never come to pass is our responsibility to make amendments to what the wrongs that we have done in the past. Until we have paid the last cent, as we see in the teachings that are brought by our Master Jesus, we will not be able to move on. And I think this is happening little by little because we are only giving the much that we can bear. Because if we had to pay everything at once, guess what? Our pockets would be would have a hole in it. But I think little by little, individuals or spirits like Dr. White and many of those helping, they have some connections in the with these group of with the Indonesians from the past, and they are now being called and said, now it's time to serve. Now it's time to go ahead and make amendments to what has been done in the past. The lesson here, and I know you love to ask this question, I would like to say is to think, rethink, think a million times if you have to before you make a decision that will impact others adversely. And think of this, you're impacting yourself as well. So we are impacting ourselves. I should add myself to this as well. So that's a good
Absolutely.
comment.
Great reflections. Thank you, Leah, for that. I'm going to continue on. We have a comment from Paula. She actually has two. She said, thanks so much for the food for thought, especially page 74. Quote, we are all the result of what we nurture mentally, end quote.
Mhm.
Her question is, what are the keys to remaining calm and focused on love when encountering critical people slash bullies?
Wow. Yes, that also crossed my mind when we were preparing this, and I go back to the moment that uh, Mr. Miranda mentioned that these higher spirits, and I'll bring it over here real quick. These higher spirits, when they are right here, I believe, yes, when they are putting a work together, when they're thinking of something, they think of all possibilities. They analyze the whole terrain of things, right? They since there really is no such a thing as chance, all spiritually constructive labors are prearranged, right? So when you're trying to do a work, you know your end result, you know what you're trying to accomplish, and I think for these higher minds, that's key. Focus on the end result. What are you trying to accomplish? And when we're talking about these works here, it's not that they're trying to make a buck. It's not like we see in politics, we see in business nowadays, that I'm trying to make a profit. Their profit, if we can say this way, is the well-being of not only one individual but a group of people. So whenever they are attacked, whenever they find the hurdles of life or anything, they focus on, okay, so what's the work? What's the end result here? What I'm trying to accomplish? I think this is what they do, as they study carefully what could happen and the possibilities of success. Because if it's something that they know that, okay, this is possible, guess what? I don't think they would do it, right? Because if there is any type of failure, I'll bring Daniel into the picture now. They will have a plan B, like Daniel likes to say, right? And they examine that. Okay, so what's going to cause, what may cause this failure, right? And as they actually put the plan to work, they go back and say, okay, we did this so much. Let's reevaluate. Let's rest to continue with our focus. So I think focusing in what they're trying to accomplish is key, and their focus is to serve one another and to serve Jesus as well. So, great question, because many of us, when we are trying to start something positive in our lives, we get inundated of people saying, "Oh, don't do this, don't do that." The great works of life start very small, and we see that there are a lot of people saying, "Oh, don't do it. This is never going to work." And we see that when people were persistent enough, they were able to accomplish a lot of great things. So thank you for the comment.
Absolutely. No, great reflections, Leo. If I can, I kind of wanted to
Chieftain, I
pick.
don't think we're hearing you.
Oh, uh, can you hear me? Okay. Um, okay. Maybe it's a issue on your side, Leo. I'm getting from my technical staff here that my mic is unmuted, so it should be. Not sure if it's on your end. So I wanted to, but I also wanted you to hear the comment I was making, Leo, so you can comment on my comment. But what I wanted to,
Sorry, sorry, I'm sorry. Please repeat it since I stopped because I could not hear anything. It just came back.
no, no worries, no worries. So no, it just was a comment on your comment on Paula's question about what are the keys to remaining calm and focused on love when encountering critical people / bullies. So kind of adding a little bit to what you were saying in a sense, something that came to our mind is that the opportunities are great when we encounter people that trigger us.
Mhm.
So, because ultimately, whatever is coming up for you when you're encountering critical people / bullies, let's take bullies out for a second because they're a different animal in and of
Right.
itself. But let's say critical people that, just make not so nice comments or may say something that just triggers you in a negative sense. And so you get upset, you get angry, whatever those negative emotions that come up. So I think it's important that we take that opportunity first to acknowledge that it's not the person, but it's us. Because I can't react to something that's not inside of me. So if I'm reacting, if I'm triggered, that means there's something inside of me that needs to be worked on. So I would say first and foremost, if you're being triggered by something, if someone is saying, even if they are known to be a critical person, if you're truly at peace and in tune, it shouldn't bother you. So if it does, it's an opportunity for us to reflect and say, okay, why is this bothering me? And to talk to that part of yourself that's presenting itself. So if it's a part of you that's angry, it's an opportunity for us to self-examine
Right.
our the different parts of ourselves, and it's an opportunity for us to really, to work on our own self growth, because I think there's this fallacy that we project we blame others when they upset us. It's a very common socially acceptable behavior when someone makes us angry, and it's acceptable to say, well, that person made me mad, or she made me angry, or she said X, Y, and Z, and it really just triggered me. Instead of doing some self-reflection and saying, okay, well, what is it about this that's triggering for me? What do I need to work on? And how can I utilize this to make myself a better person? Now, with saying that, I can assure you that in the moment, it's very difficult to self-analyze when you're being triggered. And that's quite common as well, until we reach a point where we make it a habit to say, okay, what is it? Why is this triggering me? And it really has to become a habit. Why is this triggering me? And how can I connect to love? And how can I connect to positivity and peace? And it's also a really good practice to have either something or some sort of, to have a daily practice that already, I'd say, preemptively um, calms you down, like yoga, prayer, meditation, just so you're already balanced for the day, because you never know what you're going to encounter.
Right.
So I just wanted to share that, and we'll move on to some other comments. Paula's second question, she says, is the shamanistic tradition, especially as mediums and healers, known to Brazilians? Is the shamanistic tradition especially?
Yes, I think what she's asking is yes. I mean, we don't. There is the and Daniel may know a little bit more about this, but the pajés, which is the shamans of the Indian tribes, the higher order, usually that elderly, very well respected for not that he was appointed that individual because he's has some political um, um, uh, let's say energy or condition in the tribe, but because the time that he served, the moment, what he has done for the tribe, it becomes the shaman. That's the only connection that I would like to make. And yes, they also present these capabilities to heal. They're healers. They extract from nature the remedies that the people, their people need. And again, it is also a form of expressive traditions, right? And we see this all over the world in these different tribes. So yes, it is common. Not obviously the name is are not shamans, but they present the same characteristics and they do the same work, if you will, in these tribes too.
Yes. So sharing some more comments, Ida Sama shares from YouTube, very interesting today's talk. I like the part about languages, made me think more about my own difficulties. Thank you, Leo. Yeah. Okay. I think, yeah, those are all the comments and questions we have for today. And I think given the time, it's already 6:30.
Yes.
So I think that'll be it for today.
Right. I just would like to go over with everyone. Don't get caught up on the languages. We need to transcend, right? We need to make sure that we are able to connect with one another in a more ethereal way, if we can say this way. In and technology is here helping us. We are here helping one another. Spiritism is here helping one another. We have also more to come that we're going to learn more in this great scheme of things with Mr. Miranda and the group of people. We have chapters 9 and 10 to cover in the next session, the session 5. And we are almost halfway into the book. We should be finishing this in November. But next session, we will study existential challenges. Again, we're going to talk about challenges, just as Kirsten was saying. We are being challenged every time when we do, especially when we do great things, and that may be great indicators that we are doing the right things. Lessons of high magnitude. to continue on. Okay. With no further ado, I thank you for listening. I would like to ask you to please apply these teachings in your life. Read the book. I would love to share this with you in one-on-one as well if you would like to. And we'll move on to finalize. I'll pass the word back to Kirsten so we can finish tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leo, and thank you for everyone for participating on Facebook, on YouTube, and just engaging with us, because this has been very, very fulfilling and very enriching. So thank you to everyone, and Leo, especially you. Thank you so much. So as we end our meeting this evening, we always like to end with a prayer. So if you would like to join me in just closing your eyes, let us give thanks for this evening. We thank our mentors and our guides of the Spiritist Society of Baltimore, our own personal mentors and guides, for blessing us, for encouraging us, for allowing us to feel these uplifting vibrations. And we thank you for sharing these loving vibrations to all those who are open and ready to receive it. May these loving vibrations continue to assist those that are going through many challenges, especially with the onset of the virus, of COVID-19, and all those who are transitioning back to the spirit realm at this time or recently. May those souls be embraced and welcomed with loving arms. And we pray for all of those who are forgotten, the marginalized in society, those who are most in need, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically. We pray for our whole country and the world and world leaders to be inspired by their own guardian angels, spirit guides, to do all the good they are capable of doing, to usher us in to a new world where love is the main focus. We thank our Master Jesus and all that he has taught us. And may we all feel the blessings shower over us and embrace us like a gentle hug. We thank you, and so be it. Thank you all. Have a great night.